Hi there, it's time for me to make another video, then dip for another year. So today I wanted to sit down and talk about Porter Robinson and his newest record called Nurture. So this is not a review, though if it were I would give it a 10 for sure. But I think that instead of reviewing the content of the album from a critic's perspective, I'm not a critic, so I would like to talk about this from more of a fan perspective. I think this album is just super important. Before I get into my thoughts on the album, I wanted to let you guys know where I've been for transparency's sake. I'm currently enrolled at Full Sail University, getting my bachelor's in digital cinematography, as well as working at McDonald's, home of the Travis Scott burger, trying to afford all of the BS that comes with education in America. Proud to be an American. But on the bright side, the school did send some dank new equipment, like this new camera that I'm shooting on right now. Sorry for the ramble, but I know it's been a quiet past couple years for me, but I'm still here alive and kicking. I have so many plans for my future in content creation, but to get where I want to be, I guess I gotta get that education, so. But in the meantime, I thought I'd set aside some of my time to give spotlight to an album that truly, honestly changed my perspective on my creative process. This record I'm talking about is, of course, the sophomore record from Porter Robinson, called Nurture. I've been aware of Porter's work since early 2016 when I stumbled upon Flicker off of his World LP. I consider myself a fan from that point forward, and that further solidified when he dropped Shelter with Madeon. That track became an instant classic, obviously, and the music video that went along with it told an incredible story that if you haven't seen that yet, I implore you to check it out. Now, that was 2016. 5 freaking years ago. I feel old too. So since then, we've basically had radio silence from Porter, at least from his main alias. We did get Virtual Self, which was his side project that landed him a Grammy nod. Congratulations, Porter, on that. But besides that, Porter's discography has been very stagnant for a solid 4 or 5 years since Worlds. This being due to his personal struggles with depression following the release of his debut record. Porter has said that he felt like he was running on empty trying to create new music, but just not feeling inspired enough or motivated enough to create something that he deemed was on par with or better than his debut record, Worlds. An album that was highly regarded in the EDM scene upon its release. That struggle ultimately led to him needing to go out and live and take time for himself. Porter gave a lovely description of this experience in his interview with Fantano. He said that life experiences are like these raw materials that you collect and bring into your own world, and you don't know how much of it you're going to use, and creativity can grow from that. And so that is where I believe the motifs for Nurture really take shape. A lot of us are raised by the internet. Porter, myself, maybe even you. We've all been living in front of a screen for most of our lives. We can get so caught up in trying to be something we see online, and when we go to do those things, sometimes we don't have that personal material or experiences to express into art. So, and that's where you can end up in a position like Porter, where you start to doubt your creative abilities and put yourself down constantly. It takes opening up about that struggle and taking some time to care for yourself to heal and lay new grounds for your creative output. A ton of Nurture's lyrical content covers these ideas very nicely. Look at the Sky, for example, is Porter coming to terms with his burnout and thinks that he's simply lost his touch and should move on to something else. Though the chorus is him reaffirming to himself that he can in fact make something good. And that back and forth is a consistent theme on the album. Porter wanted a lot of this record to be a dialogue between his mind and his heart, and how his heart or passion for music prevailed in the end. And then Get Your Wish is about his rise to stardom and how he ultimately felt unfulfilled by being on that main stage playing bangers for audiences to dance to. Although that can seem nice, Porter writes about how this was not the remedy to making himself feel worth something. Porter was desperate to find meaning in his work and finally realized that creating music for himself and others is what truly makes him and others happy, and what he feels is his contribution to the world. And I think that Wind Tempos confirms this, in my opinion. Porter chops up these beautiful Vocaloid vocals and glitchy piano passages that are truly magical to listen to. I feel incredibly at peace, for lack of a better term, when I listen to this track. It's a beautiful track that I think has a ton of emotional impact and is sonic proof that Porter can make something good and something that contributes to the world. And then Musician is a pretty meta cut on the record that pulls no punches on Porter's musical struggles and conquering of those struggles. It's really an in-your-face victory lap where Porter celebrates his abilities as an artist. Those outer voices telling him that he needs to move on, and his subsequent that I'm gonna do what I love just feels so good, so inspiring, and it's one of my favorite moments on the record. And then the track Mother takes a bit of a back road for a moment to explore the anxieties of moving out and not being able to see your family basically anymore besides the holidays and emergency visits. It's an incredibly touching yet daunting look at growing up with and then away from your family as you age. And coming to terms with that is something that is damn near insurmountable, but it's a part of life that pretty much all of us have or will experience. I think the happy note of this track is to truly value the time that you have with those that you love. And then Sweet Time and Blossom are two tracks that are basically two sides of a coin. One side, Sweet Time, is about Porter falling so in love with someone, that someone, I'm assuming is his girlfriend Rika, so in love with them that you are afraid of dying. And then Blossom is that realization taken a step further where all you can think about is that your time together is finite and there is no guarantee to an eternity together. Facing your own mortality, especially the mortality of your true love, is beyond difficult to come to terms with. The track describes that feeling of only wanting to see that person happy and live forever, and how that is the one thing in the world that you would want most. That track is an incredibly heart-wrenching listen, and I'd say get a box of tissues when you listen to that one. But now going back to Mirror, that's another cut where Porter is very hypercritical of himself. He describes this track as him overcoming many of the intrusive thoughts that come with having an online presence where anybody can say anything at any time that could cut deep at him emotionally. A lot of those criticisms are brought forth in this track, though Porter realizes that he is the one who's saying most of these things about himself. Mirror is about overcoming those thoughts of not being quote-unquote good enough and the struggles of doing so. And side note, please know that a lot of this is just my interpretation of this record. So please don't take any of these descriptions as being the definitive meaning of all the tracks on this record. This is just how I feel. This is how his record struck me. Anyway, then there's Something Comforting, which was one of the first tracks Porter made for this record. In a Twitter post, Porter says that he made the lead melody for this track first and didn't create anything for the track after that. He just became attached to the... And that's what made him comfortable, which made it very hard for him to finish the track. Despite the joy that probably came from making such a catchy hook for the track, he had an incredibly hard time doing anything else for the track past that point, which is where he started to doubt his creative abilities. The lyrics of this track describe this feeling as there being something wrong with him and that he's lost his touch. The song in my mind is his first cry for help in the midst of his struggle, where he wants someone to just please tell him something comforting. And that's what we all need every now and then. Someone to tell us everything is going to be okay. Going down that rabbit hole of this is the end of my career, I can't think of anything, I've had that way too early. Like, I'm too young to have felt that I've lost my touch, but it's true. Like, I've felt that before, and I thought it was time to move on to something else. The penultimate track, Unfold, is this monumental crashing of emotion and sound, where I feel that Porter is really conveying how it felt under that pressure to create something akin to or better than Worlds. He describes this feeling as shouldering the weight of the world, and wow, what an analogy. But by the end of this one, we see how Porter has overcome that pressure and moves past that to make something that became Nurture. The closer track, Trying to Feel Alive, is that final moment of clarity where Porter asks himself what he learned from these struggles and how it changed him. This moment was a self-described epiphany for Porter, where it was not satisfaction that was the true goal, but to continue on an upward path of creating over and over again, feeling that happiness multiple different times for the rest of your life. So, final thoughts. Wow, I didn't know I needed this. As a creator myself, sometimes it's difficult to go on creating and you end up in those stagnant ruts where nothing comes to you. But if you just live a little upon those grounds, you can start to grow or build a work of art for the world to behold. Nurture to me is acceptance that there are things that we can't change, but there are things that we can change about our lives. It's about seeking the beauty in the world and adding to that structure of art with your own work, especially as a creative. This album is an affirmation that life is worth living and that there are so many things about it that are special and worth holding on to, despite the constant urge many of us have to just let go. So, needless to say, I hold great value in this record from Porter. If he was here with me right now, I'd give him a great big hug. I didn't know I needed this, and I implore you to listen to this record if you have not already. It was life-changing for me, and I am beyond happy that Porter found his way back and out of that rut and made something truly special for many people. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you when I see you, and thank you for sticking with me. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Look at my boy, vibing.